Okay, perfect. And then I'm gonna start music, Nikita, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Greetings. My name is Nikita Mitchell, and I am with We As Ourselves, a new initiative launched by Time's Up Foundation, Me Too International, the National Women's Law Center, that aims to shift the cultural conversation and the dominant narratives about sexual violence and its impact on Black communities. We hold this conversation knowing that there are continued attacks on Black people right now. This is evidenced by the fact that since the Chauvin trial, 3 people per day have been murdered by the police. We know that racial capitalism, patriarchy, homophobia, and transphobia are attempting to steal our joy and steal our lives. We hold this conversation in the midst of all of that. We hold this conversation holding and mourning the death of Ma'Khia Bryant and the hundreds of Black, cis, and trans women, femmes, and GNC people whose stories we will never hear. At We As Ourselves, we believe that we must transform the culture, which tells us that Black people, Black women and femmes, Black survivors don't matter. The culture that tells us that our pain is inconvenient and we aren't deserving of accountability and transformation. Because of this, we partnered with the Center for Cultural Power, an artist-led organization, to work with Black women and film survivors and artists to shape new narratives that upend historical and cultural myths that harm and silence Black survivors and create the conditions where the stories of Black survivors can be heard, believed, and supported. If you haven't had a chance yet to check out the incredible artwork of the amazing artists that we're going to be able to talk to later on in a second, please go to weasourselves.org/Black SAAM week slash. Again, that's weasourselves.org/Black SAAM week slash. Before we jump into the conversation, I want to briefly introduce our brilliant panel of artists, community organizers, and cultural workers who are using art right now as a tool for resilience and resistance. Hey, y'all. Hey. So let me tell y'all who we're joined by, right? We have Mercy Mina, is a queer, non-binary, multidisciplinary artist. They live in South Africa and have created work across visual, literary, and performance-related mediums. Welcome, Mercy. We are also joined by Regina Evans. Regina is a modern day abolitionist in the fight against child sex trafficking, a social justice playwright, actor, and poet. Welcome, Regina. We're also joined by LaFemme Bear. LaFemme Bear Mitchell is an independent music producer, sound engineer, and artist. If y'all can't tell, this panel is about to be dope. We're also joined by Kayla Cherry. Kayla Cherry is a filmmaker and writer based in Los Angeles. And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Lisandra Campbell. Lisandra is a storyteller, writer, and editor, and the founder of Social Soundtrack LLC. Welcome, y'all. How y'all doing today?
Good.
Good.
Thank you.
Welcome. I feel like those bios just like let everybody know the juiciness of this conversation. So super excited to be talking with you all today about the amazing pieces that y'all did on behalf of Black survivors. To start, to jump into the conversation, if that's cool with y'all, my first kind of curiosity is, can you introduce yourself to us and talk about what Black survivorhood means to you? And I would love to pass it to Mercy first.
Hi everyone. I am Mercy Togozani Maina. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I reside in South Africa. I'm non-binary, queer, and I am a multidisciplinary artist who explores a number of different mediums. Um, what Black survivorhood means to me, I feel as though that's like almost the underlying through line for Black people across the globe, Black people on the continent, Black people in different parts of the diaspora. Um, Essentially, who we are as people, I think, has been shaped by an excessive amount of violence, violence that impacts us as a whole because of the way that we are racialized, but also violence that is tailored to the many different intersecting identities that we have as Black people, many different experiences of marginalization. So, Black survivorhood is almost, unfortunately, a collective um, and almost defining experience of what it means to be Black um, on this planet. And yeah.
Ooh. Woven into the very fabric of how we see ourselves and who we are. Whew. Thank you for sharing that perspective, Mercy. Regina, what about you? Can you introduce yourself and tell us, what does Black survivorhood mean to you?
Yes, my name is Regina Evans, and I'm an artist and a an artist and a social justice. I'll call myself community mama. And I believe that when I think about Black survivorhood, I think about a tapestry of opposing things, and within that journey of the opposing things as well, trying to find that balance. Like if you think about sorrow and joy and rest and unrest and successes and failures, laughter and weeping, all of that is in our tapestry, and it falls within our tapestry in such a way that it also is sometimes undergirded and touches upon what our triggers are. And so all of that is built into that. We have to learn how to negotiate the sorrow and the joy, the rest and the unrest, and walk that path towards finding a balance of that in a very unique way. As I was doing my movie for this project, I had an idea in my head I had to have red apples. One of the ancestors that we were calling upon was Mama Harriet. And I did not know why I had this idea of red apples in my head, but I found out. So Mama Harriet loved apples. They also, one of her things that they forced her to do while she was enslaved was work in an apple orchard. So one time she bit into the apple, and of course she was beaten severely. As she sought her freedom, and after she got her freedom, ran towards her freedom, what did she do? She built she grew an apple orchard on her land. And that stuck with me. I'm like, here's the sorrow and the joy. And not only that, it's that pathway in between. How do you negotiate all of that in between? And that's the path that we walk. It's the two opposing things. And then there's all this stuff in between, and having to live and lullaby some things to sleep, negotiate the other in a very unique way and with very unique footprint and a very unique handprint. And so it's for me, it's a tapestry, a very unique tapestry.
Oh, thank you, Regina, for illustrating that powerful pathway, right, for Black survivors and weaving that tapestry. Also teaching me something I did not even know about Mama Harriet. So thank you for sharing that. Bear, what about you? Can you introduce yourself for us and tell us, what does Black survivorhood mean for you?
Hi, I'm Bear, Lay and Bear Mitchell, music producer, sound engineer, artist, a bunch of other stuff. I don't know, just stuff that mediums that I use to express things that I feel about experience. I feel like I feel like if I'm being completely transparent, which is kind of a thing that I try to do a lot, is I don't know what Black survivorship looks like anymore. I have a lot of ideas. There are a lot of things that have been parsed by my brain, and there's a lot of ideas that have been given to me to hold and chew on. And there's a lot of ideas that I think a lot of us have been kind of, it's indelibly impressed on our psyche, what the ideas of Black survivorhood looks like. But if I had to be honest, like, I don't feel like I'm seeing that every day right now. And like, I know I feel. Like, I genuinely have been thinking about selling my car and just never driving again. I'm just gonna be real. Like, I'm dead ass. Like, that's where I am. Like, I've been seeing other people post about how their brother or sister or mother is no longer driving, or I can't get my two sons who are 18 years old to learn how to drive to get a license because they're like, I'm not going out like that. I don't know. That doesn't look like Black survivorhood to me. That looks like, you know what? And you know what? And then as I think about it in that moment, I think that's exactly what it looks like. It doesn't look like thriving. It looks like simply surviving. And I wonder, my question is, it becomes, why is it death or sit in fear of? That's it. I don't see it. That I like this person right here came out of closets, came out of everything, came through so many things to be the person sitting in front of you today. And to me, this doesn't feel like thriving. This feels like I shouldn't be afraid to leave my home. I want to enjoy the sunshine. Like, where is my thrive? I should be given my thrive. Like, I should be allowed to thrive. Like, I don't want to be sitting between, will I die today from some stupid shit and somebody's feelings about, oh, hey, nice car, get out, let me search that shit, versus living in fear of that every day. When I'm having a beautiful day and a sunny drive, and as that moment of joy really creeps in, flashing lights go by. Like, and you're like, wait a second, just for existing? No, I don't know. I think unfortunately, this does look like Black survival. And I think it shouldn't. I think it should be Black thriving. That's my point. That's where I'm at.
Ooh, thank you, Bear. And I'm seeing some nods. I'm seeing some resonance, right? For dropping us into the honesty and the vulnerability, but also our feelings, right? Also our feelings. One of the things that really sat with me when you were talking was like, we have the right to thrive, right? That's a right. And we deserve the sunshine. We deserve the sunshine. So thank you for reminding me and reminding us that that's actually what we have a right to and that we must get there. Thank you for sharing that with us. I want to take a moment. It's recording. I don't mean that it has to be in the conversation. It could be, it can't be. I want to take a moment. If we can just breathe in real quick and breathe out. One more time, breathe in, breathe out. Thank you. I mean that. Is there anything that we can do right now for you?
Thank you for hearing. I appreciate listening today, and I appreciate hearing. That's where thank you.
Okay. If you can just give a thumbs up right here or down, and everyone can we move forward? Do we need to take a moment or no? I'm gonna just check my screen. Lisandra, I didn't get to see you because you're on my, okay. All right, y'all. It's getting real because it is. Yeah, every day. We deserve the sunshine. Okay. Caleb, do you feel good about going next? Okay, thank you. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
And tell us about Black Survivorhood.
Yeah, no problem. My name is Kayla Cherry. I'm a 21-year-old filmmaker and writer from the Bay Area, currently based in Los Angeles. And when I think of Black survivorship, I think the word that comes to mind for me is resilience. I've told my entire life that I have to be resilient in different ways. And, and resilience is one of those things where it's a double-edged sword, because it's one thing where it's like resilience is beautiful, it's so strong, you can do all these things and you can always see the other side of it. And if you're able just to make it through these periods of difficulty, then the idea is that if you're resilient, if you have that strength, if you have that sort of like need to survive instinct, and you're able to like work on that, then things will be okay. But I think another part of it too, which is what Lefembe was mentioning too, is just sort of like, I don't want to have to be resilient. Like, I remember having these conversations with my therapist and my parents being like, why do I have to be resilient when I'm around people who don't have to be resilient, when I'm around people who have like money and access and privileges that I don't have? And so it's something that I've sort of had to like grapple with myself. And I think I've been able to balance the two between sort of like this beauty of resilience and this pain of resilience by just like doing it, like literally just like going through it and just sort of like giving myself, I guess just kind of coming back to the idea that there's been such a long lineage of people, both like in my personal family and just of like Black people, the Black diaspora, that have all had to be resilient. Like, were it not for their resilience and their desire to be here and to see a future that is better than the one that they were in, like I would not be here, I'm sure a lot of us wouldn't be here. So I think that's what I think Black survivorship is. I think it is just like the grappling with your relationship to resistance and learning how to kind of see the beauty, because we're currently in an era where like we're going to be resisting because there's so much to resist, and it can either like wear you down and hurt your heart, or it can like give you motivation to see another side. And I think the way that I try to keep my head above water is trying to look at that other perspective, that glass half full, less so than half empty. So yeah.
Thank you, Kayla. One of the things that I'm sitting with as you were talking was like the contradiction, right, of resilience being both beautiful. It's a thing that helps us get up every day, right? That helped our folks continue to move forward, and how resilience gets weaponized to justify our oppression, and that we can hold it, that we can handle it, right? It makes me think about some of the stories or the narratives that my mom used and my grandma used when I told them that I was a survivor, right? And they were like, you got this, it'll be okay, right? You got this, you'll be okay. Black women have been doing this, and I feel you when you name. I'm tired of that. I am tired of that. Put that to the side. So thank you for sharing that and bringing up that really valuable point. Lisandra, you can close us out on this particular question. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what Black survivorhood means to you.
Yeah, my name is Lisandra Janae. I use she, her pronouns. Writer, creative storyteller, founder of Social Soundtrack, which is just a space I wanted to create to have more opportunities for community and storytelling and healing, primarily across the African diaspora through creative and artistic expression. And so, yeah, I'm still sitting on the Fembear's words and just the power in that. And I think even just reflecting on the piece that I wrote, like one of the things about survivorhood, I think for me is just like not being content with that and seeing that as kind of like a launching point, but not something to end with. Like I do want to thrive. Survivorship was always modeled for me, and kind of coded in a lot of like fluffy faith talk. And I'm like, this isn't enough, like this isn't enough. We can go somewhere else. And I think in so many ways, survivorhood is complex, and and just like considering all that our community is going through and all that we experience, like still having that courage to speak up and disrupt the narratives and disrupt the silence, especially, is really important. But if anything, for me, it's a launching point, something to catapult me towards this blueprint and this future that I see, that is like, we don't just have to like maintain our sanity or maintain our mental and emotional health. Like we can eventually move to a place of thriving. And so, yeah, thank you again just for sharing those words. And I'm still just trying to chew on that and what that looks like, the potential that even looks like within this space and everybody who's on this call. So.
Thank you all. Thank you all for introducing yourselves, for bringing your full selves to the conversation, and telling us, like really laying the foundation about what Black survivorhood means to you all. The We As Ourselves and Center for Cultural Power Artist Project is our attempt, right, to challenge the narratives that currently exist about survivors using art and culture for and by Black survivors, right? And so I would love to actually talk about you all's pieces, beautiful pieces of work. What are the narratives of Black survivorhood that your piece intended to respond to, disrupt, uplift? And why do you think that that's important? Why is it important to disrupt the prevailing narratives around survivorhood, particularly about who gets to be a survivor? And whoever feels comfortable going first will follow your direction, your lead.
I'm down to go. So my piece is a short film entitled Girl Like You, and it is summarized, it is just the experimental film about a young Black woman, girl, coming into her sense of self without having male validation or without needing other people to do that for her, particularly Black men. And the narratives around Black women and survivorhood that I wanted to talk about in my piece was just like the emotional aspect of difficult situations. When I think about who wants to work in the film industry, there are just so many, oh no, my internet connection. There are so many depictions of trauma that just re-traumatize. And with my piece, I wanted to talk about relationships, and I wanted to talk about the navigating relationships, because I'm a young woman, and in particular, like that was what I was really just like hitting my heart at the time. It's just like these relationships that I've had and the cycles that I went through and just happened. And so I just wanted to just talk about, just give Black women and girls a space to feel their emotions and a space to be emotional, and to know that like the emotional impact that people have on you is like just as impactful as any other sort of relationship you can have with somebody. Like, and I think that a lot of times with Black women and Black people in general, our emotions and like our psychology is just like diminished, and we don't talk about it. We don't want to address it, especially Black women, Black girls. it's very easy for them to be seen as like over emotional or aggressive or just like hysteria, and Black women have been like put together since slavery, like quite literally. So I just wanted this piece to be something that expands the definition of a survivor, and that really gives space again to people who have faced emotional difficulty to know that that is just as valid as other difficulties, and that there is a space for that to be felt, and that they can be allowed into this survivor space as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Kayla. Beautiful, beautiful piece. Who feels comfortable going next and sharing? Regina, I'm feeling some energy from you. Can I pass it to you?
My piece was a short film called Cilia Song. And what I sought to do with it was to delve into what rage looks like for us. We had a round table, and actually La Femme Bear we did a breakout group. And I think it was La Femme Bear in our breakout group talking about rage and joy. And it actually stuck with me, and I couldn't get it out of my spirit. And so I began to think, what does rage look like for us, and how do we hold it? And of course, then I began to think, when we hold our rage, something else comes from the outside. We're psychotic. We're the angry Black woman. When in fact, rage is part of the circle of, natural course of having a full circle of emotions. And so then I began to think, then this is a very liberating thing. And I know with myself, I have stunted my own rage, because I'm like, okay, I got to do this, I got to get this done. I can't rage. I got to be focused. But in fact, then what happens with that? What happens with that is that then I'm emotionally out of balance. I am not healthy, because rage is healthy, just like every other emotion. And so I wanted to show rage in its many different forms for Black women. Like, I know with my mom, she would rage and you wouldn't know that she was raging. You couldn't tell. But like with my sister, she'd be yelling and screaming. So just like all these different, it's like a journey. Like I often see things like the tapestry, the two different sides. And so I try, and everything in between. So with the film, I tried to show different forms of rage and what it looks like. But within each of those, that it was okay for us to do. And we tried to show it in a beautiful way. Like, the film is beautiful. So I did that intentionally. No, this is beautiful. This rage is beautiful, because we're often told that our rage is ugly. Our rage is not ugly. Our rage is righteous. And so I wanted to show it in a beautiful way. And then I took it to joy. So we filmed in the forest, and then we filmed at the beach, but we also carried rage from one through the machete. We carried it from the forest to the beach, to joy, because we don't leave bits behind. The bits come with us, because it's still healthy. The bits are healthy. And so we just learn how to utilize it. And rage is a beautiful social justice and justice fuel and justice weapon, and is the soother of our soul. And so those are the things that I wanted to show, that it's okay. Like, rage on, and rage on to freedom. I keep hearing freedom. Rage on to freedom, and your personal freedom, because that's first. Like, we have a cup and on the film, and it's an overflow. It's an overflow in slow motion. and have beads dropping in slow motion, but it's a overflow. And the poetry says something like, now they are free as the cup is overflowing. So try to show things in a beautiful way, that our emotions are righteous, our raging emotions are righteous. And that's okay for us to do.
Ooh, powerful, powerful. One of the things that I'm sitting with as you were talking is that there is a dominant narrative that tells us that Black survivors don't get to be angry, right? And if they do, like you named, something is wrong, that they are dangerous, right? And how, you know, how is that narrative used to silence us about our own experiences, to gaslight us, and to lock us out of the right to accountability and transformation, right? And so it's interesting how rage, and even what Kayla was talking about, like the emotional toll of living under the patriarchal gaze, like how those things exist ultimately to continue control, to continue domination, to continue patriarchal violence on our bodies, and to silence us when we want something more for ourselves, right? And so that's just something that's sitting with me about how that narrative is used on survivors and our rights, to take us away from our rights and our bodies, actually, right? So thank you, Regina, for talking about that and sharing that piece of rage with us. Mercy, I pass it to you, love.
Ooh, so thank you to everyone who's like just shared a little bit more about where their pieces were coming from. For me, my piece is a zine, an online digital magazine that combines visual art pieces as well as text, I guess. And it's been very difficult for me to like frame what the text is, but I'll just explain what I wanted to do with the text. Essentially, the narrative about Black survivorship and Black survivors that I felt compelled to disrupt is that there are only certain kinds of survivors that exist in the world. And so like the title of my zine is Ungendering Violence, right? And I think with the way that violence moves through the world, violence I think is extremely thorough. It is thorough in how it defines who is here, right? And also in how it doesn't define who is here, how it erases certain people. And I think when it comes to Black people, a lot of us have a kind of dual existence where we are both hypervisible and invisible, right, in a lot of ways. And so Black people are visible as the site of a lot of targeted violence from various other races and various other spaces and like the infrastructure of the world that we live in. But in the same breath, a lot of parts of who we are invisibilized, such as our humanity and our vulnerability, as well as some of our identities, right? Because the dominant narrative in the world that we live in currently is that there are only, for example, two genders. And those two genders primarily engage in sexual and attraction orientations that are heteronormative. And so one of the things that I wanted to speak to with my zine was kind of demystifying that falsehood about who is here and who isn't, particularly because I have found that a part of the injury of living in a world where violence is as pervasive as it is and is as targeted towards Black people as it is that we internalize a lot of the practices and the values about dominance and about violence as a necessary way of engaging with one another. So it doesn't just exist as a interracial dynamic. There are lots of intraracial circumstances in which violence is exchanged within Black people and Black communities, and the sort of sub community, I suppose, of Black, queer, and trans people, I think was something that I wanted to speak to as a space where violence does exist, where the victims of violence within queer and trans communities are people who in, you know, dominant society aren't even recognized as valid. You know, queer people, non-binary people, trans people, intersex people, and further perpetrators of violence, you know, that occurs intracommunally within queer and trans Black communities are never thought of to be us as well. And so I think with my particular experiences of survivorship, I wanted to speak back to the reality that we're all socialized in the same system. And a part of the socialization in that system is inheriting the belief that violence amongst ourselves is inevitable. Um, and I think that is an important conversation to have because for me, my idea of what it would mean to move from merely surviving and merely being resilient and, you know, trying, like simply moving from one instance of trying to avoid death or perpetual suffering to the next. I think for me, the not necessarily the opposite of that, but an alternative to that, which would be a part of what it means to thrive, would definitely be a society where we are safer, where there is less having to recover from instances of violence. And I think the way to get there is to be as thorough as possible about where violence comes from, who is enacting it, who is impacted by it, and also giving room to the fact that regardless of who the perpetrator of violence is or who the victims of violence are, the impact is still the same. And I think that is something that we, you know, as a collective, as a species, and particularly as Black people, you know, need to hold more space for and take more seriously. I found that a lot of my experiences of survivorship have been invalidated because of my identity as a non-binary and queer person, as well as the identities of the perpetrators who have, you know, enacted violence against me, who have been other Black queer people a lot of the time. Um, and I know that there is a certain amount of sensitivity, right, because of, you know, the positionality of Black people in the world as a targeted racialized group. So there's a certain amount of sensitivity around naming that we are capable of doing to each other and amongst ourselves some of the things that have been done to us. And there's like an additional layer of sensitivity as well for queer and trans people, Black queer and trans people, particularly in the same vein, because it's like on the one hand, we're trying to defend our humanity, you know, and trying to get the world to see us as validly human, as validly vulnerable, as validly deserving of life and protection and safety. But on the other hand, there's some shit that we do that needs mending, that needs fixing, that needs addressing, that needs transparency and honesty and rage as well. And I personally feel as though there's room for all of it. You know, there's room for the ways in which we're victimized holistically, and there's also room to address the ways that we create and recreate cycles of victimization and trauma amongst ourselves. And I think the more thorough we are in addressing those things, the more thorough we are about addressing the values that we have internalized because of our collective experience of violence in like our societies, values about dominance and power and violence being necessary, I think the closer we'll be able to get to a world where those are no longer pervasive experiences or pervasive beliefs that we have that inform the way that we behave. Yeah.
God damn, the amount of gems that was just dropped. Ooh, I think the thing that I'm walking away the most with is, or not even the most, but one of the things that feels like a call to action is to be thorough, right? The call to action to really, really look at ourselves, look at society, get really clear about the systems that perpetuate sexual violence or violence, get really clear about how that shows up in our personal lives, and start to really uproot in an authentic way. Whew. So thank you so much, Mercy, for all of those gems, for all of those points that I could not kind of repeat or summarize. It was so much juiciness. Would love to pass it to La Femme Bear, if that's okay with you, to talk about what are the narratives of Black survivorhood that your piece intended to respond to, disrupt, and how does that connect to some of the prevailing narratives that exist?
Okay, so I think I want to start off with saying, and definitely jumping off from Mercy's point about being thorough. So I want to say that I don't want to just say Black Lives Matter. I want to say that Black trans women's lives matter, that Black trans femmes lives matter, that Black non-binary folks lives matter. Like, we often are removed from that narrative. So many, in the same breath of this week, that so many Black lives that aren't from our trans and queer community have gone and been taken from us by the police, the same things are happening within our community. So many girls are going down left and right. When the discussions about COVID and the Black bodies and brown bodies that were going, they weren't talking enough about the Black and brown trans women's bodies that were going because of COVID. Like, there are so many people who I know lost so many people during this, and we don't get national news coverage for our Black trans queer femmes bodies. And so I have to start with the being thoroughness that Mercy put out into the space, with that level of thoroughness, and just say that it must be distinctly said that Black trans bodies are important, Black queer bodies are important, Black non-binary bodies are important, these Black trans femmes bodies are important, and they're being taken away at an alarming rate as well. So while those police stops I talked about going through this month, I could have been another Black trans queer body that was taken away from these spaces. So we have to distinctly speak to that as well if we're saying Black Lives Matter, because do we not fit into the diaspora that has been created by the statement Black Lives Matter? So I needed to state that first. And to that point, my piece is called No More Time, because it's the idea of me, okay, being a Black trans queer femme and a Black trans woman and a Black woman and a Black queer woman and all these different identities. And when you are strange and different and the world doesn't always understand you, you move into queer spaces that are called queer spaces, even though that word in Black community has never meant anything good. But at the same time, you move into this space where they decided this word that was used to disparage you your entire childhood is now the word that's supposed to define you, which means that it's probably not a lot of Black folks who are deciding that language, right? So I move into these spaces, and I've dated so many non-Black people, white people, like other non-Black folks who don't come from even Indigenous or Black diaspora. And then the question became, why do I always have to use these people's resources to step up and move into space and move into success and move into glory? Why can't I do that myself? Why is it that the people who always have the access and resources in the LGBTQ spaces are the people that are not looking like me and not going through what I'm going through? So, and they end up then going, man, you're really cool, let's date. And then you realize that you're in this situation where the power dynamic is just horrible. Just, it's the on-ramps to life are just like, I'm over here hanging on the edge, and they're just like, yes, the shit I've experienced is hard. And it's like, I'm not taking away that for your specific experience, it was hard, but you have entered into this experience with this Black trans woman, with this Black woman, with this Black femme who goes through things you could never imagine on a daily basis, while also trying to hold all the other shit. So like, this song was about multiple relationships that were whether friendships or intimate or somewhere in between, because one of the things I love about queer and trans community is that we do not define our friendships and relationships so rigidly and distinctly as the world has taught us to. We've been bringing these different models of what a relationship looks like to the forefront, and how it can look different and not look like these traditional tropes of relationships that we've been taught, that I personally think can at times be quite toxic. But at the same time, so can these things, because they get perpetuated in our community against folks like me, folks like Kayla, folks like Mercy. Like, these are folks in a community who are trying to exist and be. And I wonder what it would look like if we had the resources to be like, no more time for dealing with that. I can go to somebody who looks like me, for the resources I need to get that leg up, that step up, that movement, because I don't know about anybody else in this space. I can't speak for you, but I would not be surprised if none of you don't have any stories where you had to move into space with some folks you would have rather not moved into space with to get to where you were trying to go. Okay, so like, that's what the No More Time is about. No More Time is about Black rage and Black joy, Black femme, Black rage, and what it feels like to be like, I don't have to say it so fluffy. I actually feel like I want you to get the fuck out of my face and leave me alone and let me live my life. That's it. That's what my piece is about.
Thank you, La Femme Bear. As you all were talking, right, it brought up that there's a dominant narrative about who gets to be a survivor, and intertwined with that is also about who has access to womanhood, right? So while Black cis women are also locked out of that narrative, oftentimes the stories of Black trans women and femmes are oftentimes silenced and challenged on the grounds of their very identity, right? Mercy and La Femme Bear, like one of the reports that came to mind as y'all was talking was by the collaborative called Solutions Not Punishment, a Black trans-led formation in Atlanta, Georgia. And they did a report called The Most Dangerous Thing Out There is the Police, about the violence that trans people experience, right, at the hands of the police. And they found that Atlanta Police Department sexually assaults 8% of Black trans women every year, and that 80% of trans people that they reported have been profiled and stopped. But those stories never make it to national news. Those stories are never the center for how our movements respond, take action, right? And we know that that's not just about miraculously some silence. That's about a dominant narrative about who gets to be a survivor, whose identity matters, who gets erased because it's inconvenient to the stories of oppression, right? About who lives matter. And so thank you all for bringing that up, because that really matters, right? In terms of, if we're gonna get free, and we believe all of us have to get there, then we have to be really clear about where violence is happening and to who.
Can I add one last thing really quick? Is that okay? I just want to add one last thing. A thing that I've been practicing a lot lately is I've been reading this book called My Grandmother's Hands. And this book has been telling me that we cannot just intellect out all of these things and this pain and this trauma that we are experiencing. We need to stop and see and witness how it shows up in the trembling of your hands when you pass by that cop on the road while you were having joy, and then suddenly you feeling some ways and you want to turn your music down and check your speed. Like it's all these, it shows up in ways when I'm walking through West Oakland and a man puts a car in front of my body and to ask me, hey, where you going, what you doing? Like, it shows up in all of these ways. And you have to ask yourself, are you doing the mindful body work? And I've been trying to be better about that. And I really just want to put that into the space, like with everything that I've said, and as angry and rageful as I am, the other part is I don't always want to be angry and rageful. Like I'm trying to do that body work. And I really just want to encourage everybody to do the body work and check in with how it manifests, how all this stuff manifests in you and like your movements. And because I think it's just so important to not just intellect out all of this stuff. We won't be able to. You need that head and mind connection in order to do it. So yeah, that's it.
Need some head nods, and also thank you for that reminder, right? That really matters. Lisandra, passing it to you. What was your piece attempting to respond to disrupt? How does that connect to the prevailing narratives that exist?
Yeah. So my essay is entitled "A Survivor Sonata," and in many ways was kind of like my search for joy and healing, and just looking at the experiences of women in my family, both those who are still living and those who have passed, and kind of challenging and wanting to redefine sort of rites of passage and just like our own, like our individual and our just collective experiences with sexual violence. And even just like right now, preparing to start a family with someone else, we've been having a lot of conversations about what healing looks like and what a home that is safe and peaceful for children even looks like, and how we can show up, like what we can and cannot say, like not create an environment where like children are seen but they're not heard, or they can't talk about their emotions or their feelings and what they're experiencing and witnessing. And so so much of it was just like unpacking my family's pride even around whether people even identify themselves as survivors. A lot of the women in my family probably wouldn't. It's just like, oh, this happened and all right, but I made it, I'm not dead. And me just wanting to be like, it has to be more than just us not being dead, like us not, just surviving. And again, like maintaining, like there has to be more to this. And there has to be more, even just how we remember situations, remember people. A lot of it came from even just thinking about like how my family, especially my dad's side of the family, remembers my dad, despite the abuse that I witnessed, despite the abuse that I even experienced. And like, that does a lot, like holding on to just anger and confusion of like, okay, well, can I talk about these issues if like everybody else has all these happy memories about my dad, or about, even people who may have caused harm to them. But I want to disrupt that and just be authentic and have like a real joy, not a joy that's like, oh, I'm fighting for joy but still, carrying these burdens on my back. And so, yeah, so much of it just from the things that I witnessed in childhood, even that leading me to some more like professional spaces with domestic and sexual violence organizations, and especially in college, and like being able to put like words and sort of like academia to my experience, but still not feeling like this is a place for healing for me as a Black survivor. Even for the women in my family as Black survivors, it was still an overwhelmingly white-led experience. And I still felt like I'm not really understood. So now it's like I have these words to describe my experience, and I have a space to kind of talk about my experience, but the healing still isn't there. And I think so much of the healing and really fighting for joy and carving out spaces for joy is going to start at home. And just thinking like, yeah, X may have happened to us, but it's not my duty to continue to carry that burden and continue to carry that, silently. Like I want to speak about these things, no matter how uncomfortable it may be for other family members. And I feel like myself and so many other people within my family have experienced violence, that's not our rite of passage. That shouldn't be our rite of passage. Like joy is our right. And we can make space for that. We can really design like what a blueprint for authentic joy is going to look like in our life. And same thing, healing is our right. And we can carve that blueprint. And I think so much of it starts from just having the conversations, and being that one in the family who, makes Thanksgiving dinners and Sunday dinners uncomfortable, because I choose to speak the truth of my experience. And so, yeah, overall, there's a lot of heaviness in the essay, but I think overall it's just like pushing towards joy, but an authentic joy. And we got to like actually address the roots of where we come from, and what we've experienced to truly have that.
Thank you for sharing, Lisandra. One of the things that I really sit with from your piece is that that violence doesn't have to be inevitable, but it's going to take some bravery. It's going to take some uncomfortability. It's going to take actually the belief, right, that joy is possible, which I know is also a narrative that exists, that Black survivors don't have the right to pleasure, don't have a right to joy, that your life is centered around your survivorship only, right? And so there's something very beautiful and complicated and nuanced that I feel like your piece really speaks to. So thank you for speaking on that. We are closing out and getting to time, right? But I want to ask you all, for folks who feel comfortable, to just answer one last question, right? So art is the gateway to both understanding our current world, make meaning of it, right? But it's also a gateway to envisioning the world we want to live in. And so I'm curious, what is the world that Black survivors deserve from your perspective? What role does art and culture play in getting us to that world? Is there some folks who would like to speak on that?
I don't mind starting.
Can I? Oh, go ahead.
Is somebody else going? Okay. I think for me, especially writing music, it's always something that I kind of went to get away from everything, even as a kid. But it's also like my little space where like I can get everything out without being interrupted. I feel like a lot of times, especially with my family, like I talked about this in my essay, they are very prideful, and it's like, nope, not bringing that up, not bringing it up. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I know my family will read my writing. And so writing for me is like, I think it's almost like my own little monologue. And I think there's so much power in a monologue to just speak, write, and not be interrupted by having to respond to other people's emotions and like, like while you're trying to get your truth out. And so it's that medium of just like, okay, I can say all the things that I can without interruption. I can release things that don't belong to me, that may have happened to me, but I don't have to hold on to it. And I think really for the sake of like carving a future where Black survivors have belief and action. I even think of, and really just being, I think, deserving of more than even just PR campaigns. Like, I'm really grateful for this space, and I hope that people don't just, months from now or a year from now are like, oh yeah, that We As Ourselves thing, like, no, like, yeah, like this, retweet it, share it, do all of that, but also we need your action in like really carving out the futures that we're talking about, carving out these spaces. Don't just feel it in this moment and, I don't know, agree with it in this moment and then not do anything a year or 5 years later. And so we need a space where we're believed, but also where people are gonna be catapulted into action to actually do something about it, whatever that looks like, whatever your sphere is, whether that's media, whether it's law, whether it's education, whether it's abolishing our entire carceral system, putting that into action and not just feeling or empathizing with us in this very moment.
Black survivors deserve continued action, continued support, continued protection, continued commitment. Thank you for sharing that. Regina, was that you coming off mute to share?
Oh, yeah. So I think, I think about the word deserve, and I'd like to pair it with insistence. Like as a survivor, I as a budding thriver, and we as survivors, also we deserve to insist and to be insistent. upon the things of our dreams, upon the things of our life force, of the things that make our hearts smile, of rest, of nourishment, of just being able to have breath, of flowers, of sky. You know, we deserve to be insistent and to insist upon those things. We deserve to be able to have for ourselves to tell our stories without people thinking that we can't hold our own stories and tell our own stories. We are the blueprint. We're the blueprint. We hold the stories that are sacred and that are divine and that, of course, through our being. And that thinking about all of that, it's beyond deserve, it's insist. And so now we insist. Now we insist upon these things for ourselves. So it's interesting because going through this process with we as ourselves literally changed my whole entire life. I will be 60 on my next birthday. I have been on the ground doing grassroots work, fire work, very difficult for 15 years. During this process, something opened up inside of me, and which was, I insist on living. I insist on my joy. I insist on doing my art. I'm literally moving across the country to delve more into my art. This was born out of this process where I've been talking about insistence for like maybe 2 years now. It happened where it manifested during this process. And so then I took the steps and everything opened up. And so I know that deserving to insist upon the things that are required life for survivors, for thrivers, is necessary. And, you know, art pours the water on it all. Art nourishes the thought of it. It nourishes the heart, the spirit, and the soul of it. That's what art does. It's our air, it's our breath. To be able to manifest and to just be able to feel the edges and the center of thoughts of, I have a right to insist on beautiful things for myself and for other survivors and thrivers.
Before we move forward, for folks who are going to watch this, who are engaging with this conversation, who are Black survivors, I just want you to take a second and speak to yourself that I insist, right? I insist on living, right? One of the things that, just coming up for me is like this concept of being a budding survivor, but also that's not just an individual project, right? That is a collective one. That is a community one. That's if you love me, if you care about me, right? Then you're actually going to make a prolonged commitment to showing up for Black survivors and showing up for me so that the conditions can exist for which I can thrive, right? And something about that is both a personal commitment and a call to action. And to see yourself clearly. Let's see ourselves clearly so that those conditions can exist. So we can be on that journey that you were talking about earlier, right? That just, the call. I'm sitting with the call. Mercy, you want to share with us what is your vision for Black survivors and how can art culture be used to get there?
I'm definitely going to echo and affirm Lisandra as well as Regina's statements about Black survivors. being deserving of continuous action, and Black survivors being worthy of the right to insist on living and our joy. And I think what I can add to that is that I feel as though Black survivors are deserving of limitlessness. I think we are deserving of being able to exist wholly and, you know, fully in our survivorship and everything that that means. Um, and, you know, in terms of acknowledging the extent of um, the damage that we have incurred, acknowledging the extent of um, how our survivorship has shaped who we are as people, and also being able to stretch beyond that and explore who we are outside of our survivorship, explore who we can be outside of our survivorship. I think we are deserving of expanse and abundance. And I think the beauty about art is that it allows us to create possibilities that are limitless. It allows us to create possibilities that are beyond anything that we are experiencing in the present. I think art allows us to world build in a way that I think a lot of survivors are not allowed to. You know, I think a lot of the time survivors are sort of stuffed into these little boxes where all you can be is like, you know, injured and suffering, and silenced and invisible and not allowed to inconvenience anything. Um, but I think that art breaks a lot of those barriers open, breaks a lot of those parameters open. And I think survivors deserve um, to be able to exist with no limits, to be able to exist with no restriction around who we are and who we can be and who we can envisage ourselves to be. Um, yeah, and we're worthy of taking up that space.
Thank you so much for that, Mercy. Can we lift and bear? What's your vision?
I believe that art is meant to disrupt the psyche of that kind of collective thing that happens where you kind of get that group majority thinking. It happens a bit too much sometimes, which can be helpful, but also needs to be checked quite often. So I think that art just disrupts the main ideals that are placed on us as a collective psyche as humans, and then that white supremacy places on us as Black beings, as Black bodies. And so I think it's a really important thing when Black art specifically speaks to its experience and says, I can hold this, I don't need you to hold it for me. We can do this, we don't need you to do it for us. We can tell our stories, we don't need you to do that for us. So hey there, funders and all these charitable organizations that often give Black organizations tiny funding, unless there's a bigger white organization that's helping them do that thing, then suddenly there's a check, but you can't hold that check. They got to hold it for you, and you got to ask them for the pieces that you need, and they deem whether those pieces are valid for the work you're trying to do. How can you tell me we can hold our own stories and our own voices if that's how you decide to dole out the resources? Why don't we have the ability to hold the resources? So art speaks to that, especially when it comes from Black art. And I want to quote Aja Monet, where she says, I hold so many Black women in my mouth. And I just really want to say that I want to add to that. I hold so many Black trans women in my mouth. I hold so many Black, queer, non-binary folks in my mouth. I hold all of these stories in my mouth, and you hold it in your pen when you write, Lisandra, and you hold it in your film, Kayla, and you hold it in your film, Regina. Like we all hold it. Mercy, you hold it in your amazing mind and words. Like I've just been like parsing everything you say. We are able and capable and have the capacity and greatness and brilliance, right, to hold our stories. And that is what, to me, art means. It means that Black art needs to be exalted because we are speaking to our experiences and we can hold it. And it'll be not, I'm gonna say something that's gonna be real now. It's going to be not just healing for the Black folks, but it'll be healed for the white folks who have racialized trauma that they need to get over so we can all heal. Because the reality of the situation is folks walking around being so scared of each other all the damn time. The art needs to go up. Listen to the Black art. We have the healing here. You just need to listen to the voice. You need to listen to the voices. They're all here. You got to hear them. You want the real healing, you need to listen to our voices. That's it. That's what art means to me.
Ooh, come through fucking points. Can we cuss on this thing? Come through points. I would love to close it out. Kayla, you sharing with us what your vision is.
Alrighty. So my vision for sort of just like the world that Black survivors deserve is one that doesn't allow us to have to survive. Like my world would be like no more of these capitalist systems that are literally made to oppress and to hoard and control power and everything from educational access to job access to even like the arts. Something that La Femme Bear mentioned was that, you know, when even like in these art spaces, it all kind of comes down to who has the resources and who will give them to you. And I think this is a really interesting group because we're of so many like different walks of life and even ages. Like Regina's turning 60 and I just turned 21. And as someone who I guess is a Gen Zer growing up in this quote unquote like woke neoliberal era, like I've seen like firsthand examples of just like me having to just explain my work to white people, explain my work to the institutions, kind of like fight for my position in these like very white centric, heavily capitalist, heavily I'm trying to think of the word, exclusive spaces. And in my future, there wouldn't be that kind of exclusivity because I think exclusivity creates incentive to have to grind and survive and do all these things that don't really, at least for me personally, that don't lead to peace of mind. Like working these 9 to 5s and like talking to like these teachers and these people and this like even like other artists who are not coming from where I'm coming from, it's exhausting. And so ideally, I wouldn't have to be exhausted all the time. And I think that the role of art in that is to give a platform to those experiences and to help explain these ideas to people. Because a lot of people, like, you know, be trying to talk to them about patriarchy, anti-capitalism, racial capitalism, things like that. Like it's too heady, it's too intense, it's whatever. But you know, if you can make it funny, like if you can do a stand-up routine, or if you can put it in a song, or if you can put it in a zine, or if you can put it in a movie and engage the public consciousness in a way that is, I guess, less abrasive from the traditional standpoint, people respond to it really well. Like one of the most surprising things that I've seen in the couple days that my piece has been out is that a non-Black male reposted it, and he was just like, he literally hit the nail on the head for everything I was trying to talk about. Like I was talking about like learning how to love yourself, learning how to like idealize yourself. Like he was like talking about how he's like, I'm gonna show you like my nieces and my cousins and my nephews and all these people. And he was just like really moved by it. And I think that's like what art can do. Like art connects people. Art gives voice to the experience, because I, as a Black woman, was talking about my experiences within patriarchal society in relation to Black men and heterosexual relationships and things like that. And then this other person who's in some ways opposite to me was able to take that, see it for what it was, and then like spread it to people, younger people especially, like because he also has like a kid and stuff like that. And I just think that's just so beautiful, and that's the power of art. Whereas you can't really, you're not able to show a kid, you know, a JSTOR academic article or a New York Times, whatever. You can show a kid a song, you can show a kid a show, given it's appropriate to show them. And that can really like stick with you. Media sticks with people in ways that I don't think we truly like realize. Like I think we take media for granted when it truly is one of the most powerful and accessible methods of education that exist, honestly. So yeah, my Black survivor world is one where surviving isn't required. You don't survive, you just live. And you can just make art, and we can spread art, and we can, just all live in community together. Like, that's really what I want. I just want like community for for Black people, for Black women, for Black femmes, for Black non-binary folks, Black trans folks, like for us first, because that's where I come from, and then like for the world at large. Because I think once one population is liberated, then the rest follow suit. It's like a domino effect, but positive.
Thank you all. Thank you all for bringing your stories, bringing your visions, bringing your heart to this conversation. Thank you for writing the pieces that y'all wrote, for committing to be artists, for committing to challenging narratives and being a disruptor. Thank you. This has been a really powerful discussion, and I feel really fed by it. And hopefully for those who are watching, you feel the same. We're going to close out our panel by just naming that all throughout Black Survivors Week, we will be hearing directly from survivors and allies about their truth, how we should break down these harmful dominant narratives and redefine what it means to create a world safe from sexual violence. So we invite you to be a part of this process with us. We invite you to make this a commitment with us, right? To find out more ways to get involved, check out weasourselves.org/Black SAAM week/. You can also go to National Women's Law Center, Time's Up, or Me Too International pages, whether it be on social media or our website, to learn more information. Super grateful. Thank you everyone who watched and participated in this conversation. Thank you, Mercy, Kayla, Lisandra, Regina, and LaFemme Bear. And we will be talking very soon. Take care, everybody. Much love.